of all, 30-inch bed, the primary reason that market gardeners are doing a 30-inch bed is, for one, ergonomics. It's easy to manage by hand. It's easy to walk across the field. So there's an advantage there with access. You get in and out fast. But really what it's about is consolidating the crop down to less space. So you use less land, right? So in row crop farming, where you see row, dead space, and it's a tractor running that, you're wasting your land, but you're also creating more space for weeds. So the real idea behind a 30-inch bed is less unusable land and more usable land, less space for weeds, also less space for erosion. So when we get heavy rains in here, the only erosion that's really happening is in the walkways, and that's not so important to our production. But also, we're creating a little mini microclimate where we've got shade on the soil, and so we encourage biology in the bed. We're not walking on the bed, so we're not compacting the soil. It's just for many purposes, it creates better soil. And in a market garden, we're not using big tractors, typically. We're using hand tools. So it's just compacting the space. Another thing that's really great about it is you use less materials on 30-inch beds. So when it comes to season extension, that's the biggest part of it, is if you've got more crops compacted into less space, you need less greenhouse space, you need less row covers, you need less insect netting, you need less irrigation. You're using less of everything because your crops are more consolidated. So that's the main idea there. And you know, if perfect case scenario, if you had more open land, just to do beds in 10 block areas is great, because you can have a field that can get cropped out near the same time, and like I was saying in the greenhouse, you can let the tarps do the work. So we're going to talk specifically about silage tarps, which we've got lots of over there. Ray's using them actively on the farm. We've got some covering some beds here. So our idea here is that we're not going to just crop out something, till it, and plant it again, because now we're going to bring up more weed seeds, and we're going to put more weed seeds that fly in underground to come out up at a later time. So that's the idea behind not consistently rototilling. We pull a tarp right over these crops once they're harvested and just let them die. They get smothered out from the lack of sunlight, but there's also a high humid and hot environment in there which flushes out weeds. So by using these tarps, we're consistently bettering our soil for biology, because we're not rototilling it consistently, but we're also flushing out weeds. And you'll actually find when you pull a tarp off, you're going to see all the worms and bugs come to the top. It actually, I don't want to make the claim that it increases biology, because I don't know that for a fact, but I do know when I pull those tarps off, there's a lot of activity there. So that's a good thing.
Can you talk for a moment about pathways, landscape cloths versus wood chips versus nothing?
Yep. So what Ray's got going on is a perfect example of that. This is what I would do, is when you've got a break in your blocks, wood chips are a good thing. I generally like to start with some landscape fabric down, and then I might put chips over it, just because weeds will make their way through. If you've got access to chips and you can put down new chips every year, then that's even better. Then you don't have to worry about the fabrics. What they've got on these bed blocks is a perimeter of landscape fabric all the way around. That was my suggestion to them, and the reason for that is so that creeping weeds aren't right on the edge of your blocks and your beds. Because what will happen is over here, you're going to have Bermuda grass and other weeds creeping in, and your edges are always going to be more weedy than everything else, and then those weeds are going to keep making their way in. So if you can immediately set up a perimeter around your blocks, you're just going to reduce your weed pressure over time, and it keeps it clean. It looks tidy. Things are clearly defined. And you know, if it were me, this is what Jean Martin does at his farm. Is he has silage tarps on both ends of his blocks. So if his block is 10 beds wide, which is probably, depending on how your walkway width, it could be anywhere between 50 and 80 feet. you could have a silage tarp on this side and a silage tarp on that side, so that when this block is cropped out, you just pull those 2 tarps in, and then that sits for a month. Then you're on to the next block, and then a month later, you pull those tarps back, do shallow cultivation and soil amendment, and then plant again. And you're just gonna keep working out weeds that way. So that's like a most ideal scenario.